publishing houses in Europe. So the origin of the writings are found in United States, Australia, and different countries of Europe. Now, let us consider the way how a manuscript becomes a pamphlet or a letter or any kind of printing material. Especially the manuscripts, except for a few interviews and sermons that were registered in shorthands, was originally written by hand by Sister White. So the general manuscripts were written by the hand of Sister White. Now, the handwriting document was handed to one of her secretaries to be copied. And many times this original manuscript was carefully written and needed very little or no change in orthography, punctuation, or grammar. But in different occasions was needed not only some grammar corrections, but a better formulation of sentences. So in the archives in Washington, D.C., you can see some of these examples. You can see one manuscript of Sister White, written by her hand, and how after, on the side of the paper, you see notes, you see marks. Don't concentrate too much to copy what's there. Try to understand. Try to understand. If you copy all the time, you don't hear what I say. You don't hear the explanation. You can copy further on. I don't have any problem with this. But in the process of learning, first you need to understand. If you copy and you don't understand, what have this for a value? You need to understand the development of the ideas, the development of the process. In order to understand, you need to understand the idea. If you get the main idea, then you need to write the main concepts. But if you copy this, okay, copy it. I don't have any problem with this, but I don't think that this will help you a lot to have this and then to learn it if you don't understand the process. So we have from the same manuscript different versions. So, which is the first version of a manuscript? I already mentioned. This is what Sister White wrote with her own hand. Yes. This is the original one. She received the vision, then she wrote down. Now, she wrote according to the inspiration. So maybe they were very short sentences. But the idea was not to make a perfect text that need to be written down, but only the ideas to be written down. Now, maybe grammar problems were there. Sentences, the connections between the sentences, the right description to be there. So you need a second version of the same. Not that this became something new, but was better description with no mistakes in the final version from this first section. Now, when the secretary of Sister White typed it, this typed copy was sent to editorial and then was changed again. So we find the second change, because then go through an editor, okay? Because you can say exactly the same, but in a better form, more understandable, yeah? You don't change the meaning of the sentence, but you can write in such a way that is nicer, beautiful to read it, and even more understandable. So in the editorial, they change, and this is the second moment that we find the next version. But was done in such a way that large spaces were added between lines. so that Sister White have the opportunity to go through again to see if this edited version correspond to the original vision that she have received. And we see also these versions. You can see it if you visit Washington, D.C. Even in Alabama, there are some. I will speak with Brother Watts. Maybe we can organize a visit to Alabama. I think this will be very nice. I will speak with him because it's not so far. Because I think this will be very nice. It's not the dimensions that have Washington, D.C., but have some files, and it's like a reduction version of Washington, D.C. And I think this will be interested. I will consider this, speak with the brother. Now, when she received this edited version, she also introduced corrections, but not always was this text that she received the idea according to the vision that she received it. So he rewrite some of the edited version that she received. And then was made another copy that included the last revision or less correction that she have done. And then when these corrections to the edited was introduced, then was sent again to Sister White to see if this final one correspond completely to the vision or the inspiration that the Lord have given to her. And then, in order to consider this manuscript as final version, you find always that she signed it. And very often she writes final or complete. And then the date is not always in all the manuscript, but the sign and the words final or last version is always included. And then we can say this is the final manuscript. So let us go through the different stages for a manuscript. Yeah? Okay. She received the vision, or the Lord inspired her. So which was the first step?
She wrote it down in point form.
Exactly. How the ideas came, how the thoughts came, how the Lord inspired, then she wrote immediately. So this is the raw manuscript that she received. Then she gave to her secretary to type it. This is second part, okay? When we have the typed version, the secretary give back to Sister White, and she went through, yeah? And then she made some corrections. Then the secretary typed it again, because unfortunately they don't have what we have, the laptop, so they needed to write completely everything again, okay? And then was sent to the editor. And then the editor edited this text. And then sent it to Sister White. And a large space between lines was added so that she had the opportunity to write down corrections. And then she made also these corrections. In some cases, a lot. And then was sent back to the editor. The editor introduced all these corrections added by hand by Sister White to the final edited version. Was sent again back to Sister White. And then she read it again, everything. And when she agreed that this corresponds completely to the vision, to the inspiration that she received, then she signed it. And then was final manuscript. So this process we need to understand very well. Now, when the piece was ready to send to the people, was archived as such. Maybe it was not a specific subject for the moment, maybe it was a panoramical vision about one historical aspect of the Bible, and they didn't know where to publish at this moment. It was not added to the Review and Herald or to Signs of the Times or to any other magazine, or they are not in the process of preparing a book, then they file it. So was always done 3 copies of the manuscript, always. One copy was kept by the binders, in the binders for letters. Another one was in the personal archive of Sister White. And another one in the archive of the manuscripts. And from the majority of the manuscripts, you have still the 3 copies. And you can find this in the building of Sister White Trustees. Now, very often people say, okay, if all this message went through so many hands and through many minds, especially in the editing form, what kind of proofs we have that really correspond to the original revelation that Sister White received? Okay, the first answer is she signed it. This means she agreed, and the content of the manuscript corresponds to the original message that she received to the Lord. But Sister White herself considered this because already in her time they put in question if, for example, the article as appeared in the Review and Herald from Sister White was exactly as Sister White received it. And then she wrote in the Review and Herald on October 8, 1867, the following. And here I will state that although I am dependent upon the Spirit of the Lord in writing my views, as I am in receiving them, yet the words I employ in describing what I have seen are my own, unless that they be those spoken to me by an angel, which I always enclose in marks of quotation. So, this testimony is very, very important. Because people say, yeah, if this goes through the secretary, then through the editor, maybe Sister White accepted, for example, synonyms, words that mean the same. So this was not the exactly word that Sister White used. And that was in question during her life period. So she wrote here and said, I depend of people. When her husband was alive, he always edited all the writings of Sister White. After, and even during her husband's life, also secretaries came to work, but generally he was in charge of the final editing. And he was very, very accurate in this work. So he tried to keep everything as Sister White received it. And she agreed with this. By the way, Sister White went through a big crisis in her life when her husband passed away. Because she even said to the Lord, why this happened? Why this happened? Because he was always with her, supporting her, helping her, and she also to him. And the answer was, he was overworked. He worked day and night. And the Lord said to her, because he worked too much, his energy, his life was consumed before the time. And therefore, she also writes a lot about the right balance between work and rest. She writes a lot about this. And Sister White received the message from the Lord, I will provide people for you that will help you, that will support you. And that was like this, especially after her son accompanied her to Australia, also to Europe, and helped her a lot also in all the editing and preparing the work. Now, the point is this, and I am receiving, let me see. Yet the words I employ in describing what I have seen are my own. Only when an angel speaks, then she introduces quotation marks and write exactly what the angel told to her. So then we have the assurance that the editing was not changing the words, don't adding like synonyms or other kind of descriptions. The editing was limited to the connected the sentence, avoid any grammar mistakes in the process, and that the description will be a flow and good organized idea. So the editing was not a changing of the words that originally Sister White wrote. Therefore, we have, and we can say that this what we have is the words that she received from the Lord. After was another problem, and also questions arise related with the work of the secretaries that she had. Because they say some people were in her house, she liked to have a lot of visitors, and some of them hear how Sister White said to the secretaries, okay, formulate it at as the last time. So they came to the idea that the secretaries also somehow were part of all the process to describe and to write down. So they began to spread the rumor that not everything was written down by Sister White, but also the secretaries added, according to their view. So she felt the need and was compelled to express how the process functioned. So in Select Messages, Book 1, page 50, you can read, while my husband lived, he acted as a helper and counselor in the sending out the messages that were given to me. We traveled extensively. Sometimes light will be given to me in the night season, sometimes in the daytime before large congregations. The instruction I received in vision was faithfully written out by me, as I had time and strength for the work. Afterward, we examined the matter together. My husband correcting grammatical errors and eliminating needless repetition. Then it was carefully copied for the person addressed or for the printer. So this was the first period of the publishing work of Sister White. So she received the vision, she write down. Then they go through with her husband. And the work of her husband was to eliminate any grammatical error and any needless repetition. Because for sure, when you speak, you will not write in the same way as you speak, because you repeat a lot words when you speak. But when you write down, you cannot do this. So you need to connect the sentences, and you need to describe in such a way that use similar words in order to avoid the repetition. Now, let us see what happened after the husband of Sister White died. In the same page in the same book, continuing. As the work grew, others assisted me in the preparation of matter for publication. After my husband's death, faithful helpers joined me, who labored untiringly in the work of copying the testimonies and preparing articles for publication. But the reports that are circulated that any of my helpers are permitted to add matter or change the meaning of the message I write out are not true. So, the helpers of Sister White was not permitted to them to add or to change anything. What in some cases Sister White gave as a commission to some secretaries was because she remembered that in the files were some visions from the past, especially that was in the book Prophets and Kings. And say, okay, I think I received the explanation from the Lord from Hezekiel 1 and 2 about the wheels. Do you remember the first vision of Hezekiel? Hezekiel 1 is this vision that the prophet see many wheels, one together with the other, and what the impression of big confusion. So she received a vision for it. And then she said, but we need this for prophets and kings. So she gave the secretary the commission, go and look in the files, because I don't remember when, but I know that I received this vision. So let us look for it. So she went through, find it, and give it to Sister White. And then Sister White go through and say, okay, we need to make some changes so that we connect it with the chapters in the way as we are organizing Prophet and Kings. And then say to the secretary, okay, in which section we stopped the last time? So here, no, we cannot add it here, we will see when we will add it. And she reminded Sister White, remember this, you say that this need to be here. Okay, so this way was the work of the secretaries. And many people, because of this, came to the conclusion that also the helpers of Sister White somehow introduced changes or corrections in the text. But this was the way as functioned. What about the archives? We have considered the manuscripts until now. The first time that Sister White received a specific and clear instruction from the Lord regarding the care of the manuscripts was in Australia. And let us see what she received from the Lord. Gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. Do you remember when the Lord said this in the Bible? These are words from the Lord, not from Sister White. In 2 occasions, Jesus said this. Yes?
The 5 loaves and 2 fishes feeding the 5,000.
Yeah. And the second time? It's in the same occasion, but which were the number of people?
4 tons.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So in these 2 occasions that this special miracle happened, the Lord said, gather up everything so that nothing be lost. Now, in this context, Sister White received a message that all these letters, spread it all over, manuscripts needed to be filed together, to be organized. So in 1898, a special effort were made, special efforts, to gather together all the manuscripts that were available at that time. And then began the first time, 1898, when files were established in a systematic and accessible way. So this date you need to know. 1898 was the first time that a systematical and accessible way a filing system was introduced. Now, what kind of system was used? So the manuscripts were grouped according to years. So the first that they have done is to gather together all the manuscripts that were available. That was the first part. The second step was to separate them according to years, okay, in chronological order. And then for every year, they give a number. This is the reason why when you see manuscripts, you see 1889, number 145. This means this manuscript is for this year, and before this manuscript were 147 right before. So they were classified according to years, and every year was numbered. And with every year they began with 1. Okay? So after they institute this system of filing, each manuscript was identified with a clue in the last copy that indicated its location in the archive and was useful as a source of reference for his own date. So 3 levels of filing: year, number, and general was added a letter or 2 letters to it. So general, when this kind of manuscripts was a letter, the system was like this. If you remember, first was the year. So let us suppose the year was 1896. So this is the first filing. Which is the second one? Numbering, yeah. The number. Let us see, that was a completely new subject, so we have 2 before, so this is number 3. It's the third manuscript that she wrote in 1896. This is what we know. Now, when was the case that this manuscript was a letter, addresses to individual churches, institutions, or groups of workers are placed in this section, filed letter. You find in different ways, yeah? You can find FL or you find only L. So it's a letter, okay? So the final version for filing will be letter 1896 3. This is one way. Yes?
Wasn't the first filing in 1898?
No, I give an example. No, the first filing was in this year. But I think when they took a manuscript, let us say from year 1896, yeah, it's only one example. That was one, you find different versions. Then you find letter 3, 1896. There are different options how you find it. So this is the way how when you look at the testimonies you see this. You see L or you have M or you have, according to what kind of document was originally, or manuscript also, you have M. So for the manuscripts, they are a very precise system, and they didn't change it from the beginning until the end. About other things, they changed it, but this remained. So by the manuscripts, they first established the general classification of the document. But the manuscripts, yeah? The first, what they have done with the manuscripts was divided in 2 main sections. If this was a letter, therefore it's very important that when you write to the sister-wide trustees, you need to give them exactly the information that they needed to know to find what you wish. You cannot say, I wish something about vegetarianism. They will say, but you know, they are thousands of things. Do you want manuscripts? Do you want articles? Do you want letters? What do you want? So therefore we study this so that you know exactly how this functions. Because when you need to ask for something, you need to tell them what specifically you want. So the manuscripts are divided in the first section, letters or manuscripts. So they are letters or are general manuscripts. So when we come to the letters, it's obvious that was addressed to some person, individuals, institutions, or to the General Conference himself, that we have a lot of it. So when we created the categories, then we need to establish a series in this file, and then we divide it according to years, both. Okay? And then we divide it according to numbers. Now, they also added not only the years when these letters was originally write down, but also the year of filing. When was the first time filed? You cannot have this information until they send it to you, but they have this kind of filing system. For example, when you go to Washington, D.C., and you say, okay, I wish to go through the index of the letters. Yeah? Only the index card, yeah? You find always one letter, number, and then the year. Let us see one example that you have in the screen. Yeah? You have here that in 1906 a letter was issued. The first initial of the name of the person to whom the letter was sent was Henry, let us say. Then they used the first initial, an H. And then they write down the number in the drawer of the file that corresponds to 1906. So you will find, in order to find this letter, you will find letter 64, 1906. But in the same way, and this is very important, in order to ratify the information, when you look for a letter, yeah, you need to be clear which is the origin of this information, and then you have the numbering and you have the year. Now, in the same way function with the manuscripts. The only difference is that they added MS for manuscript. So always you know it's not a letter, it's a manuscript. That was not considered at the moment for publishing, so remain as a manuscript. So the system is exactly the same, they only changed the initials. This is the numbering, and you find here the year. So this means is manuscript number 117 and fill it in the section corresponding to 1908. This has to do with individual letters and with manuscript in general. But you have also a subdivision that are manuscript addresses to workers of a particular field that are considered from local interest. And from this we have more than 200 pages of manuscripts that cover a period of 30 years approximately. Do you remember how many manuscripts? Let us go at the beginning. 45,000 pages. Can you imagine? So this is very, very important to understand the process of classification, because this helps you a lot if you make a research. For example, you began with the index cards for every year. And it's very good because in the index card they have like a summary or the subject that was about the letter. Yeah? For example, if you study the subject about divorce and remarriage, everything that Sister White wrote about this. So you began 18, if I'm not mistaken, is 1898 or 1896, I am not sure now. So you began with this index card and you go one by one. And you see in this year everything about this. So you take the index and you say, or you write, so they send it to you the first letter. Then you go to the next year. So you have everything chronological. This is not only important to have everything that she wrote about this, but the important thing is to have in chronological order so that you know how the light increase. The same with the work position of the church. You began with the year after year going through, and you see all the light that Sister White gave about this. So you see, and you have until the end, the completely development of this doctrine. About vegetarianism, the same. When the first vision was given, you go there. It's in a manuscript. So you go there, and then you follow every year to see if something was giving about health reform, or meat eating, or tobacco, or coffee, or dressing, or house cleaning, hygiene, and everything. So then you don't depend of all these kind of compilations that are done, but about the specific subjects like divorce and remarriage, vegetarianism, military issues. You need to be sure what is true. About votation, for example, the vote. Yeah, when you see this in select messages, is in the way as it is, so you say, okay, she praised these two soldiers, but how is this possible? So you need to go through, and then you understand the completely context. Therefore, it's extremely important that you understand how the archives function. Because if you need to research something, if you need to study something, and even if you will never do this, but you have a book in your hands, especially if it's a compilation, when you look at the chapter that correspond to a specific subject, you need to look all the quotations. And you need to put it in the chronological order as they appear, because otherwise it's not the case. Like this example from divorce and remarriage in Advent Home. They are not in chronological order. And they are distributed between letter and manuscripts independently. And many letters to the same persons are presented as cases that were to different people. And that was not true. So you can only understand this when you consider the source, the origin of the information. And this is the reason why we went through all this process. So we have considered already that in the filing of the manuscripts we find individuals, letters. We have letters to groups of people or fields or institutions, but we find also letters that are confidential. And these are personal messages that the Lord addressed to those who were in charge of carrying forward the work. We find letters to the President of the General Conference, and that was written there, confidential. So never was the idea to publish these things. That was personal letters that the Lord say to Sister White to write down according to the message that she received. So, and she wrote related to this. Through nearly the whole of my long experience, I have endeavored day by day to write out that which was revealed to me in visions of the night. Many messages of counsel and reproof and encouragement have been sent out to individuals. And much of the instruction that I have received for the church has been published in periodicals and books and circulated in many lands. So much of the instruction, yeah? But they were sections that were counsel, reproof, encouragement for individuals, and that was not published. Now, let us review a little bit about the file. So, if you consider that 45,000 pages of manuscripts are available and 4,500 articles that appear in different journals, these files correspond to 16,000 index cards to the manuscripts and articles. So I think it's a great help that all this work is done, because otherwise how to find things, how to classify things in these immense papers written during time. So 45,000 pages of manuscripts, 4,500 articles, summarized in 16,000 index cards. Now, homework. But before this, this will help you a lot. If you read Select Messages, Book 3, Section 9, Can All Have the Gift of Prophecy? It's very interesting and inspiring. Please read it. Now, your homework will be to relate the administration of the writing and publishing materials. What this means? You need to take a book. You can choose the book. A book that includes a compilation. So you will not take the Desire of Ages or Patriarchs and Prophets. Yeah? You will take like Advent Home, early writings, any one that you wish. And then you will make a list of the sources of this book. They are manuscripts, or they are articles, or they are pamphlets, or they are letters. And then you will do for yourself this, okay. Letters, articles are here, books. Please don't read only the introduction and write me what is there. So you need to go through the book. This don't mean to read the book. You go through and you see letter, 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 article, article, manuscript, manuscript, and so on. When you have gone through, then you say the book title is so-and-so, and the sources are 120 letters, 45 manuscripts, 72 articles, and whatever you have found it. Okay? It's clear? ¿Sí?
¿Leer un libro?
No, no tiene que leerlo, porque no le va a dar tiempo hasta mañana a leer el libro. Usted tiene que coger un libro que sea una compilación. ¿Ya? Por ejemplo, El Hogar Adventista o El Hogar Cristiano. Usted coge ese libro y entonces usted va pasando página por página y ve siempre, después de un párrafo, de dos párrafos, está escrito en paréntesis de dónde es, si es un artículo, es una carta, es un manuscrito o es de otro libro. ¿Ok? Entonces usted se hace una lista y va poniendo carta, 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 no sé cuánto. Cuando ha pasado por el libro completo, entonces usted hace un resumen y dice, el libro, título, así, se compone de la siguiente documentación. Entonces pone 120 cartas, 8 artículos, 3 libros, 2 manuscritos, etc. Esa es la idea. Entonces usted coge un libro y solo mira la referencia, no es que se pone a leerlo. Okay, is clear?
Yes.
The homework? So this way we close this first class, and may the Lord help us to be aware how the information is filed and then use it in the proper way. This is my wish and prayer. Amen. Let us close.